Sean Pickett with Sales Integrity here. Thank you for listening to the Sales Integrity Podcast. I created a free course for you titled 7 Steps to Master the Game of Complex Technical Selling. To claim your free course, just visit mastercomplexselling.com. Again, that's mastercomplexselling.com, or simply text the word SI course to the number 44222. Again, that's SI as in Sales Integrity. So SI course, all one word with no space in between SI and course. Otherwise, you'll get an error message back. So simply text the word SI course to the number 44222. Now let's jump into the podcast. Hello, Sales Achievers. Welcome back to another Technique Tuesday episode on the Sales Integrity Podcast. Yesterday, we talked about what does it mean to truly have sales integrity. If you haven't listened to that episode, I strongly recommend that you go back and listen to that as we defined what it truly means to have sales integrity. We defined what integrity means in combination with sales and a selling career. So I think you'll find that interesting. But the reason why I bring that up is towards the end of that episode, we talked about the key elements involved in the concept within that make your sales pop mindset mantra that we always talk about. And POP is obviously an acronym, stands for preparation, organization, and productivity. And if you're not taking the time to prepare for those key aspects of selling and of your sales game, then you're really doing yourself a disservice. So those three things really allow you to become better organized and more productive. So when you're prepared, you're going to be organized. You're organized, you're going to be more productive. So the thing to look at as it relates to your sales game is if you find that you're consistently overwhelmed because your weekly mode of operating tends to be flying by the seat of your pants, winging it on a daily basis, that's going to cause you to severely mismanage your time, then you're most likely not demonstrating that you have sales integrity. So what I thought we would do today is look at the top 5 aspects of selling you should always prepare for. So kind of a top 5 list here. And I'm going to go in reverse order, like we're on a talk show or something along those lines where they do their top 10 lists or top 5 lists, and they kind of go in reverse order. So top 5 aspects of selling you should always prepare for. Number 5, preparing for initial prospect calls and meetings. Of course, I started off with the obvious one. Believe it or not, we run across lots of sales professionals in our coaching efforts at Sales Integrity when we go in and work with tech sales teams specifically that aren't preparing, aren't taking the time to prepare before they go into initial meetings. They think, I got this. I know my business. I know my products and services. No worries at all. It's just another initial meeting with a prospect, target market, potential customer here. I got this, right? And what happens is there's no consistency to the mindset and to the preparation that goes on. So every single initial call with a prospect could be different. And when that happens, you are flying by the seat of your pants. You're winging it. And yes, you may come up with specific sound bites and kind of a normal routine or approach that you go through, but every prospect's different. And in today's world, where there's lots of emphasis on social selling, where buyers are reaching out later in their buying journey after they've taken the time to do lots of research on the internet, you're going to get a lot of curveballs thrown at you, more so in today's modern selling world than in the past. So the days of flying by the seat of your pants and winging it, not being a thought leader, not being unique, not being different, not taking the time to prepare for an initial prospect call, those days are long gone. You're just not going to be as impressive as your competitive peers in the marketplace who have taken the time to prepare and are really portraying themselves, presenting themselves, and really through their behavior demonstrating that they do have sales integrity, that they are preparing and taking it seriously, knowing that there's a lot more options out there for buyers and they're a lot smarter or more well-informed these days. So number 5 is preparing for initial prospect calls and meetings. Yes, it's obvious, but I definitely wanted to bring it up and just kind of take a new look at that. And just one thing to leave with that number 5 point, you only have one time to make a first impression. And it's an old adage, it's an old saying, but it holds very, very true in the profession of sales. If you're not impressive the first time when you meet with a prospect and engage with a prospect, they're always going to remember that as that's who you are. You know, that was your first time interacting with them. You just didn't take it seriously enough to prepare for it. So keep that in mind as you think about that particular point as it relates to your overall selling game. Okay, moving along. Number 4, preparing for presenting proposals. Some people call them statements of work. Some people call them quotes. Some people call them proposals. But when you have already engaged with a prospect, you've had a series of meetings, and now it's time to present what your solution is with a cost or an investment attached to that. That really takes some careful preparation. You got to make sure not only preparing the proposal so it's presented the right way, so it looks the right way, so they could tell that you really put some thought behind it and customize it to meet their needs, but also the way of which you're going to present it. Are you going to print it out? Are you going to present it on a screen, on a PowerPoint? What's the best mode of communication and getting that across? Is it remote? Are they located in another country, another state? So do you have to do this as a web meeting? So think through all of the logistics of communication. That takes careful preparation, so you're not kind of fumbling and bumbling through that process. Because again, they're watching you. They're watching your behavior and seeing if you've taken the time to prepare and have taken it seriously. The other thing that you want to keep in mind when it comes to preparing for presenting proposals is that it should be a written summary of what was already verbally agreed to. So if you're doing it right, the proposal shouldn't be some magic show where it's, ta-da, here's my pricing and here's my proposal. It should really be a written summary of what you already verbally agreed to. So this is going to cause you to examine your overall selling process, the stages in your sales cycle. Is that built in where early on in the process, after you start to understand what the requirements are and how this solution is shaping up, the size, nature, complexity of it, are you starting to get an indication of what that price range at least will be? Maybe you don't have a specific price, but maybe walking them through a price range to make sure that you're in the same ballpark, as the old cliche goes, right? You don't want them to be in a little league ballpark and you're in Wrigley Field, for instance. So just keep that in mind, that you can't be too far off. You want to make sure you socialize that early enough in the process, but not too early where it scares them away before you had a chance to engage with them and learn a little bit more about what they're looking for. So when it comes to this point number 4 on the list of the top 5 aspects of selling you should always prepare for, that number 4 item is preparing for presenting proposals. And a proposal should simply be a written summary of what was already verbally agreed to. So it's not a magic show, ta-da, here's my pricing. You want to make sure that there's no surprises there. Okay, moving along. Number 3, preparing for negotiations. Yes, this is different than presenting your proposal. Although they may start pushing back on pricing or certain features, or do I need this or that, or are you throwing too much in there in terms of bells and whistles, that's not necessarily the negotiation I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is you've already met with them, you've gone through your stages of the sales cycle, you presented the proposal, and they said, okay, let us go back and talk this through amongst our committee, amongst our decision team here, and then let's get back together and talk about it. They've called and let you know then, or they sent you an email saying, hey, good news, we want to move forward with you. We just wanted to discuss some of these key elements of your proposal and some of the terms, some of the conditions, the pricing. And this happens all the time in sales, right? It doesn't matter what you're selling, what complex technical product, service, or solution you're selling. This happens all the time. We're pre-wired, pre-built. It's in our DNA as human beings to want to get the best deal. So your customers, your buyers are always going to be in that position. You should always prepare for that. Right? You should always prepare. I'm not saying completely fluff up your pricing where it's so far high that if you come down, okay, now it's where I want to be, because you might price yourself out too high to where they're just not even going to come back and negotiate. They're going to say, wow, you're so far out in left field, it's just not going to work for us. There's no sense even negotiating. So keep that in mind, that the preparation when it comes to negotiation starts with, are you getting it right? Did you listen to your prospective customer? Did you truly understand what their requirements were? And then did you map those requirements to your product, service, or solution and the way you're going to roll that out, implement it, customize it, all that good stuff. And then are you priced accordingly? So think through that when it comes to pricing and the investment that you're going to present to them. The other thing is, are you presenting it as an investment and not just a price, right? So are you tying your solution back to some sort of tangible benefit, tangible value, ROI that they're going to experience after working with you, after you implement their solution or your solution, after they're using that solution. So you should always pre-build that into your proposal and your discussions as well. That makes negotiation that much better. So nowhere does preparation really shine through more so than it does in negotiations. Because if you did everything right leading up to it, maybe there's no negotiation. Maybe they just say, yeah, let's get going. This makes absolute sense. Or maybe they do just, you're going to get those clients or those prospects that really want the best deal. So is it truly just they want to get a deal? And think through that. It doesn't always have to be price. It could be, tell you what, we can't come down on that investment price tag there. We can't come down on what our pricing is. But what we can do is we can throw this in, or we can throw that in. We can provide some extra support. We can extend the support time period, whatever it may be. Think of the other elements, the other components of your deal. What are you willing to give on that would preserve your price, right? Because it can't always be about price. So think about that. Negotiation tends to be about pricing a lot. That's why I'm bringing this up and talking through it. But you want to think in terms of win-win scenarios. What's going to be a win for them? So you're going to be able to give them something, but it's also a win for you. And most importantly, he or she who prepares the best always wins negotiations. So he or she who prepares the best always wins negotiations. And what I mean by that, especially an embedded point in here, is if you're willing to walk away, meaning there's an absolute line that you've kind of drawn in the sand and said, if they're asking for too much, I'm absolutely willing to walk away. That's your greatest asset. If the other party knows that, wow, this person really does have a line, they're really willing to walk away here, then people tend to be more reasonable when they realize there's a breaking point, there's a walkaway point. Even for a sales professional, even for a company selling something, there should be a walkaway point. The deal's just not profitable. They're asking for too much. We're not going to be able to deliver it in that short of a time frame. Don't sign up for bad business or bad deals that you just know you're not going to deliver on. So it doesn't always, again, have to be about pricing. It could be unrealistic expectations on the prospect's end, and you just need to make sure that you nip that in the bud up front, you handle it accordingly up front. And if they're just absolutely adamant on it, then it's better to walk away from bad business than to take it on. That'll ruin your reputation down the road. So just keep that in mind when it comes to that. So far we're covering the top 5 aspects of selling that you should always prepare for. Number 5 was preparing for initial prospect calls and meetings. Number 4 is preparing for presenting proposals. Number 3 is preparing for negotiations. And number 2, we're going to unveil right now number 2 is prepare for networking meetings. That's right. I put that at number 2. Can you believe that? That's even higher than preparing for initial prospect calls and meetings and preparing for presenting proposals and preparing for negotiations. Why? Because those 3 things you should be doing anyways. And if you're not, and if that's news to you, then you really got to really re-examine your sales game and what you're doing and what you're focusing on. But I put this at number 2, prepare for networking meetings, because most sales professionals I find are not doing it. And if you're honest with yourself, you're out there at networking events and meetings, and you're networking with people on LinkedIn, through social media, maybe even Facebook or Twitter, and you say, hey, let's get connected. Well, there's no real purpose here. There's no method to the madness when it comes to networking with a lot of sales professionals that we've coached when we first start coaching them. So a typical networking meeting would go something like this. Hey, let's go meet at Starbucks or coffee, insert coffee shop of choice or restaurant of choice. You go sit down with somebody, you shake their hands, you say, okay, let's sit down in a comfy seat here and grab a coffee. And then you start to get to know each other, right? So you get to know each other, you learn about each other's backgrounds and, how you came up through the ranks of sales and maybe some other things about family and just their personal life. And then you start to say, okay, tell me a little bit about your company and what you're doing there, what your products are, who are your ideal target market clients in case I run up against them in the marketplace. I could facilitate some intros and, who you're looking to get introduced to from maybe other networking type partners and all that good stuff. Okay, great. Well, I tell you what, I'll keep an eye out for you. You keep an eye out for me. And you kind of both share that, exchange that type of information. And then, there's really no action items. Now, the really good focus reps will say, okay, I tell you what, let's think through. I got some people to meet or to introduce you to that I want you to meet. I'm going to go through LinkedIn. I'll look at, some of my contacts now that I know what you're looking for. I'd like you to do the same, and let's just facilitate an intro or 2 for each other. Okay, great. You shake hands, you both get in your cars, and you drive off into the sunset of good intentions. And that's really what happens. And the reason why most sales professionals after that type of networking exchange don't follow through, and if you're honest with yourself, you probably have a lot of hanging chads out there, a lot of a lot of, next steps hanging in the balance out there that just were never completed, but you had good intentions to do so. And so did the other person. And you might have even followed up on some of them. They've ignored you. They said, oh, I'm sorry, I got real busy. I got a big deal coming in. I got a proposal, or my biggest client needed something, so I had to jump in there. The reason why you're not going to see much success with that type of an approach is because you didn't prepare. You didn't prepare a really good approach to networking, a really unique approach that is really focused on and centered around action items during the networking meeting, right? So just keep that in mind that you didn't do that. And the reason why, by the way, it doesn't happen, the reason why most people don't follow through after those types of networking meetings is because there's a hierarchy of importance for sales professionals in general. It doesn't matter what industry you're in. That hierarchy of importance goes like this: customers number 1, prospects number 2, employer number 3, and then networking partners number 4, if they're lucky. What I mean by that is, if your boss calls you up and says, hey, what are you doing right now? And you say, I'm meeting with a networking partner. Hey, get in here. We need to work on this big deal. They're going to want you to bump those types of meetings so you can work on things internally. So they're always going to trump that. But if your sales manager calls you and says, hey, what do you got going on Thursday? I need to meet with you. You say, hey, I got a meeting with our biggest customer. They're not going to tell you to reschedule that. I got a meeting with a net new prospect. They're not going to tell you to reschedule that, right? But if your biggest customer called and you had a prospect meeting scheduled the next day and they said, I really need to meet with you, you're going to lose the business or something's going wrong here, you're going to have to bump, unfortunately, that prospect meeting because you got a paying customer there that you got to take care of. So I think this makes sense to everyone. Number 1, customer; number 2, prospect; number 3, employer; number 4, networking partners, right? Contacts in your network. So, and I think anyone in your network who's reasonable will understand that hierarchy as well. So what do I do to avoid that type of scenario of driving off into the sunset of good intentions and no follow-up? I conduct what I call a network sift. We don't have enough time on this podcast to go over that. And as a matter of fact, I already went through that in my free 7-day video email course. I go through it in detail. As a matter of fact, it's one of the 7 steps to master the game of complex technical selling. So if you haven't signed up for that yet, go to mastercomplexselling.com. Again, it's mastercomplexselling.com, and you can sign up for it there. And you'll see it's one of those 7 steps. There's a whole 15-minute video dedicated to that. I even share my screen and show you in LinkedIn exactly how to get that done. And if you prepare, I promise you will love me for sharing that idea. Everyone that I've shared that with has come back to me and said, wow, that is just outstanding. That's really changed the game for networking. I'm getting a lot more value in facilitated introductions to target market end customers, not just kind of chatting with networking partners and then no follow-up. So keep that in mind. Go there, check that out. But absolutely, number 2 here is preparing for networking meetings, because that can give you a nice steady flow of target market leads to target market prospects in your list. Okay. So again, number 5, just to summarize the top 5 aspects of selling you should always prepare for. Number 5, preparing for initial prospect calls and meetings. Number 4, preparing for presenting proposals. Number 3, preparing for negotiations. Number 2, preparing for networking meetings. And number 1, prepare your sales routines for each day and each week. So preparing for your sales routines, you got to make sure you prepare. This is your overall sales game. Good habits and rituals help produce consistent results. So if you're experiencing the peaks and valleys nature of the selling profession, where I spent all this time up front calling and emailing and in-mailing and networking and doing all the things I need to build a sales pipeline, then I redirect all my efforts to working on the opportunities in that pipeline. Then I close a handful of them. Now I spend my time working with those customers, and next thing you know, I turn around and say, oh no, I don't really have much of a pipeline. I got to start over again. I'm not going to achieve my quota this quarter, this month. That's the peaks and valleys natures of the selling profession. So the way to avoid that is prepare your sales routines so you're scheduling blocks of time for all key aspects of your selling game: lead generation, sales cycle management, and customer relationship management. Those are really you can summarize your entire sales focus, your sales career, what you're doing on a daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly basis, annual basis, to those 3 major components, key components of the sales overall, sales game, if you will, which is you got to generate leads. So lead generation. Once you generate them, you got opportunities. So you got to manage the sales cycle. And then once you manage them through the sales cycle and close business, now you got to manage the customers. So lead generation management, sales cycle management, customer relationship management. So if you prepare your sales routines to account for those 3 key phases, key components of your sales game, you're going to be in great shape because you're going to establish good habits and rituals that produce consistent results. You'll stay in balance there. And the way you do that is scheduling blocks of time for everything. Once again, that's one of the 7 steps to master the game of complex technical selling. I have a whole 15-minute video on that. Within that free course. It's free, so sign up for it if you haven't already done so. If you've already done so and you haven't looked at all the course videos, go back and do that. If you've already done so and you've looked at all of them, go back for a refresher, because I like to apply the theory of RITBL. Repetition is the mother of all learning. So go back and do that. So let me just summarize here. The top 5 aspects of selling you should always prepare for. Number 5, preparing for initial prospect calls and meetings. Number 4, preparing for presenting proposals. Number 3, preparing for negotiations. Number 2, prepare for networking meetings. Number 1, prepare your sales routines. We will end today's episode with a quote from Louis Pasteur, the famous French microbiologist, chemist, and pioneer of the germ theory of disease and inventor of the process of pasteurization. So this guy was really smart, really accomplished. It is a very simple quote that I absolutely love when it comes to the concept of preparation, which was the focal point of today's podcast. And that quote is this: chance favors the prepared mind. Chance favors the prepared mind. So if you look at some of your peers that are rocking and rolling and doing a great job selling, and they're making a lot of money and constantly achieving and exceeding their quotas and buying nice things and all that, you think, wow, they're really lucky, man. They have things fall in their lap. Well, chance favors the prepared mind. Chances are they're really well prepared in these 5 aspects of the selling game that I just outlined today. They're always prepared for those key selling scenarios, and that allows them to have the favor of being prepared and having the favor of chance where things will fall in their lap. So you could do that same thing. You can create that same type of environment. Just make sure you consistently prepare. Now, let's finish today's episode with a few quick reminders.
First, we recently launched 2 new B2B tech sales professional groups, one on LinkedIn and one on Facebook. Just search for B2B tech sales professionals on either LinkedIn or Facebook, or both if you want to join both groups, and join the conversation with your peers there. Second, if you haven't already subscribed to our free 7-day video email course titled 7 Steps to Master the Game of Complex Technical Selling, then you can do so by visiting mastercomplexselling.com. Again, that's mastercomplexselling.com, or you can text the word SI course, so as in sales integrity, SI course, all one word with no spacing in between. If you send it with a space between SI and course, you'll receive an error message back. So text the word SI course to the number 44222. After subscribing, we will send you your first lesson via email right away on day 1, and then 1 for the next 6 days. Third, if you haven't already done so, please subscribe to this podcast on iTunes or SoundCloud. Just search for the Sales Integrity Podcast with Sean Pickett, and it should pop up and allow you to subscribe on one of those 2 channels. After you subscribe, please provide a quick 5-star rating and simple 1 to 2 sentence review to help others find the show. To provide a review on iTunes isn't as simple as you think. You can't do so directly within the podcast. What you have to do is actually click on the search icon, then type in Sales Integrity, and you will see my podcast there. Now, I'm referring to the purple podcast icon. When you click on that on your iPhone, brings up the main podcast center. Down below, you'll see the search icon. So click on that, type in Sales Integrity, and you'll see the podcast there. Click on the podcast. In it, you'll see the reviews tab in the middle there. Just click on that. And once there, you could provide a 5-star rating and simple 1 or 2 sentence review. Now, since iTunes prioritizes shows with the most ratings and reviews higher than those that have just a few of them, this will dramatically help the show be found by more people. So I greatly appreciate it. And finally, please share the podcast with your colleagues and friends who would find it relevant. You can do so by going to salesintegrity.com and click on the Sales Integrity Podcast menu link at the top of the page. All of the podcasts are there, and it provides you a way to click a button and share any episode, whether via email directly to individuals, or there's buttons there to share it on the various social media sites, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, etc. So I would greatly appreciate it if you spread the word about the show on social media to help grow it. And finally, that'll do it for today's episode. Now go out there in the sales world today and help your prospects and customers buy what they want, what they need, and what benefits them. And most importantly, go out there and make it a great day.